Is data a blessing or a curse? Brought to you by Adastra, this is a must-listen podcast that inspires and advises people who are serious about digitalization.
Hello and welcome to this Adastra podcast on data observability. My name is Mark Cahoot and I lead the data governance practice at Adastra North America. If you're hearing the name Adastra for the first time, we're a global AI, data, and cloud systems integrator with offices in 12 countries worldwide. And we have one laser focus, helping you unlock the power of your data to make it your superpower. It's my pleasure to introduce my guest, Elton Martins, who joins me today in our Toronto studio to talk about something we've been hearing a lot about lately in the data space, and that's the discipline of data observability. Elton's based in the New York tri-state area and is a seasoned data leader with deep experience in scaling US and Canadian data organizations and building modern cloud-native data platforms. Most recently, Elton led data teams at the NFL and Genius Sports, where he built scalable, governed, and reusable data ecosystems to enable advanced analytics, real-time insights, and the good stuff of AI-driven use cases. So welcome, Elton. It's great to have you with us here in person, and I hope I've done you justice in introducing you. So tell me now, what are you working on of late, and what's keeping you awake at night?
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be here. I'm really excited about our conversation today. Data observability is a hot topic and a topic that a lot of people are interested in, and really happy to be here to talk more about it and share my experience. So over the past few years, I've been laser focused on building data products to power sports analytics and really help organizations, sports organizations, leagues, and clubs make data-driven decisions and just make better decisions with data, to whether it's in marketing, in media, in fan engagement programs. So that's been my focus over the last little while. What keeps me up at night, I think, as a data leader, there are many things that, gives you a lot of headache sometimes. But I think what I would say is that, like many data leaders out there, they want to ensure that all the large investments that are being made in modern data platforms are not wasted because of unreliable data.
I think you've given words to that 1,000-yard stare we see in so many tech leader and executive eyes about getting ROI. So I hear you. Companies are often surprised at the care that data needs to get uptake and ROI from their tech spend. So the need for data management tees up today's discussion, I think, pretty perfectly. So for those, who might be listening or watching us today who haven't heard the term data observability before, could we just talk a little bit about where it is to level set and why it's such a hot topic? Elton, help us out here. So what is data observability?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I think data observability, I look at it as the ability to monitor, understand, and ensure health of your data pipelines throughout your data ecosystem.
Right.
So I think about it as a set of practices and technology that help teams identify and remediate data issues early on in their data pipeline before it impacts downstream consumers and downstream applications. What I would also add is that data observability is not a new term, but It comes from software engineering best practice as well. It's almost like we took a page out of software engineering and DevOps books, right? Because we have application observability, tools like Datadog and App Dynamics and Grafana. So it's almost like you're borrowing those techniques and applying that to data systems.
Right. Well, porting ideas over is always is one of the greatest ways to innovation and genius, right? So thanks for that. We're talking about real-time data monitoring concepts that we've taken from DevOps and application health, and now we've sort of ported them over so that people can focus on data in the same way that they're looking at real-time systems. Gotcha. So, all right, but why has this risen of late? What's been driving all of this?
I think the main reason as to why data observability has got a lot of traction, I would say, over the past 3 or so years, is the fact that it addresses critical challenges in modern data environments, where complexity, scale, and the need for AI-ready data continues to grow. So I think that's the main thing, but there are many key drivers as to why data observability becomes so important. The ones that I can think about is, the identification of silent failures. Right? If you work in the data environment, you've seen cases where the data team is monitoring their pipelines and they see no issues and the logs are clean and everything is working as expected. But at the same time, you're getting a phone call from your finance department saying this number doesn't look right. Right. So
I can't reconcile these reports.
I can't reconcile these numbers. This looks off.
Looks like
it doesn't
an anomaly.
balance with what we reported last month. Right. So, and when engineers are trying to troubleshoot it, they say, well, the pipelines are running fine. Right. So that's where observability really comes in and helps you identify those silent failures.
So your ETL pipelines might be flying along. But what about what's in them, right?
Exactly right. So is the content correct? Is that the data flowing as expected? Right. So that's one. I think the second one is there is increasing pressure within organizations to have more transparency in how the data is collected, how it's transformed, how it's used. So that's not only internal pressures, but also privacy laws and regulations that are driving that conversation as well, right? Where you just need more transparency on how your data flows and how the data is being used. So that's the second one. I think the third one would be, there is a shift in the market today to treat data as a product and also to data mesh type of constructs and architectures. Right. So at the end of the day, you're democratizing more data, you're democratizing more data products, and that becomes important for you to ensure that those are reliable. Sometimes that you collaborate on data outside of the organization or you monetize on that data. So that is, it's pretty critical to ensure that data is reliable. And on the data mesh side, these decentralized teams, oftentimes they need more autonomy to monitor and observe their own data domains. Right? They want to have that full visibility on the domains that they are responsible for. And that's where data observability tools come into play. And the last one I'll say to that, Mark, is data drift detection. Right? This is specifically important for AI ML applications where you want to make sure that the distribution of your data is not varying drastically without you understanding why that's happening. So that drift detection becomes really important to ensure that all the inputs and outputs to your analytical models are consistent.
Interesting. There's a whole lot to unpack there, Elton, but as a data governance guy, I listen for a few things, and you touched on regulatory compliance, right? Which has always been one of the big drivers for data governance, especially since the great financial crisis of 2008, where regulators stopped asking just about, okay, what are your risk positions and so on, but why should I believe you? So I think you're touching on traceability, right? You're touching on lineage and being able to demonstrate data integrity. So I think that's actually a big deal if data observability can help there in real time. You also touched on the fact of distributed architectures, both on the technology side, but also on the people and process side, right?
Exactly right.
I imagine you've got business units, and this is where I think linking together data observability and the business benefit of data observability, that's really the why, I suppose. I feel like we're talking about a world of federation. Right, you might have centralized data platforms. Indeed, the monolithic data architectures and data lakes that that information processing architecture has worked towards in the last few years. Actually, they put power in the hands of the people, right? Kind of thing.
Exactly
Ultimately, you have teams. It's the business people who have the knowledge about data. So I wonder if this doesn't actually put us in a situation where they're able to do more earlier, kind of thing. But it feels like we're building on something, right?
Yeah.
We've been talking about data quality management for decades, right? And I'm curious where the shift is, what's truly new, because organizations have been profiling data to understand what's in there and what's going on, doing data quality issue analysis, downstream impact analysis, data cleansing, be it manual, an army of data custodians, or automated tools that do this, right. And of course monitoring it to be able to watch over trends and stuff like that. What's new in the data observability space as opposed to classic data quality management?
Yeah, it's a really great question and one that we get quite a bit. So I think the biggest difference between if you step back and you look at traditional data quality frameworks, right? They ensure that your data meets certain data standards. Right? Usually in key dimensions like accuracy, completeness, timeliness, consistency, all the data quality dimensions.
6 of them or 7 of them that I can never recall on the spot whenever I was,
None of us can.
Despite doing this for a decade.
But yeah, so they essentially ensuring that your data is meeting those standards that's typically defined by a data governance team.
Right.
Now, data observability on the other hand, centers around real-time monitoring of your data pipelines and the content of your data.
So now you're drilling into the pipelines themselves.
Correct. Gotcha. And also understand the behavior of your data pipelines. So the way that I would summarize it is this. Data quality answers the question, is my data fit for purpose? Data observability answers the question, is my data flowing as expected? Right. And is it behaving normally? Right? So I think that's the major difference. Now, they're complementary. They're not replacing one another, but they're complementary to each other, and they're both important.
I'm curious, can you give me an example of kinds of problems that you might find with that, my data isn't flowing normally? What could be going wrong kind of thing? Or what kind of issues might data observability pop up? I realize this is, granular and detailed, but... Yeah,
I think a really simple example to think about it, if you have a data source, you have hundreds of data sources coming into your data stack, into your data platform. One of the sources that typically gives you 5 million records every hour, let's say, as an example. All of a sudden, huge volume. So all of a sudden, you're now getting 500,000, right? Chances are that there is likely an issue that you probably need to investigate.
Understood.
Right? And those data observability tools, they have these ML models that learn about the shape of your data and how it behaves over time and set these thresholds that every time there's one of those thresholds are violated, it sends you an alert that say, look, this looks a little bit off. You might want to investigate if this is a real issue, and oftentimes it is.
Gotcha. So you're looking for anomalies, for example, in the flow and the shape of this. And it's interesting that you bring up AI. So I think we'll have to talk about tooling a little bit as well for this, but is AI powering a number of data observability tools these days? Has the AI wave made its way into this as well?
Absolutely. So a lot of these, this is a new wave now of new changes and new features and AI capabilities to make the ability to observe data and detect anomalies even more robust and accurate. So that's a big deal now, and something that a lot of the vendors are like pushing on and racing to get it right.
It sounds like a really interesting value proposition for organizations that are bringing in a lot of disparate data sources, real-time feeds, or even batch feeds, what have you, but feeds in any way, and centralizing them, integrating them, mastering them, especially for data sources that you don't have control over.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
100%.
So it might actually let you do something useful with that. So I get the sense that because of when it intervenes, right, earlier up in the data capture and integration stream, data observability actually lets you turn data quality management on its head a bit, right? Turn it upside down. And so if you've got these distributed, federated teams of data custodians addressing problems before data sets are used in analytics and AI, before they even get to cataloging and so on, you're removing one of the typical data governance bottlenecks that a whole lot of companies face, the people and process side of things. You've got limited resources, limited numbers of data engineers, data custodians, data stewards, and ever-growing backlogs for data management issue and how to resolve them.
Incidents, yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point, because when you think about data teams that don't have an observability function, a data issue is raised. They know that there is a problem, but they have create a ticket. They have very little visibility on where that problem could be, right? And so that sends an army of people on fishing expeditions trying to resolve that issue as quickly as they can without very little to go on.
So even that's inefficient.
Right? Very inefficient.
Okay. Yep.
Now with observability, you now have the whole end-to-end visibility of your data pipeline, right? You know where the data is coming from, how it's transformed, where it's going, who is using it. So now you have that full lineage and all the dependencies along the way, which helps with issue detection and remediation. So now you're taking these very expensive resources, oftentimes data engineers, and you're arming them with additional insights on how to remediate that problem. And you're drastically reducing that time to remediation,
Absolutely.
So you're not only improving the reliability of your data, but you're also allocating your resources, very scarce engineering resources oftentimes, more effectively. And that's a really good value proposition of the tool as well, because it just allows you to just use resources more efficiently.
Without data observability, if you're taking a reactive approach rather than a proactive approach to data custodians handling data quality issue or data engineers handling the issues, the amount of analysis you have to do in impact analysis, and if you have an imperfect world of inventories of reports and AI models and dashboards where a particular data element might be used, and especially as organizations get large, if you don't have a perfect view of that, you're going to spend a lot of time working out downstream impacts. It strikes me that if you could just obviate that batch of work that needs to be done when you find data quality, when you're tracing data quality issues, go that much faster.
And you can be more proactive in terms of communicating with downstream teams as well, because there is nothing more frustrating for them when they find an issue that the data team never knew about.
Right.
They're the ones finding it. So when we actually we discover those issues early on, and you open, the line of communication with the downstream consumers so they understand the data that they use and the limitations that exist, I think that's really good for culture and team dynamics.
And suddenly you understand why things are happening, frees up energy, concentrate on other things, right?
Correct.
You speak the same common language and everyone knows where to look for things.
That's right.
But that's me dragging you away from technology, because I'm a governance guy. And as you know, we governance folks tend to talk too much, especially about people and process side of things, whereas everyone wants to talk about the sexy technology stuff. So let's turn to that. What's the potential of data observability for, reducing infrastructure bottlenecks and making your data and your systems architecture that much more efficient? Can it help you there on the processing side of things and how quickly you can do stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about, we talked about visibility, end-to-end visibility on your data stack. I think what's very important to understand here as well is that you're now collecting this metadata and metrics about your pipelines, things like runtimes or resource utilization, failure rates, right? So you're now providing the data team with those powerful insights. And again, that will arm them to think about their architecture and optimize and so on. For example, they look at usage rates and they may decide that certain data assets that never get used are now going to be sunset.
Right.
Or decommissioned. not a lot of organizations do a lot of that, those type of hygiene work, right? Because it's hard to do. Now, if you have visibility into usage information, you can quickly make that decision and simplify your architecture. The other thing as well, you can look at these failure rates and say, there is this specific component of my data pipeline that's very error prone.
Yes.
And it's very slow and inefficient. And it really drives my cloud costs.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe there is an opportunity to optimize that specific component. Maybe an ingestion component, maybe a specific business rule that is taking up a lot of time. Could be a number of different reasons. And I think both of those actions, it not only improves the reliability of your data, but it also leads to a lot of cost savings.
Especially, of course, governance guy, when you're talking about data proliferation, right? Unused assets, be it tables, right, be it semantic models, be it AI models, things like that you can sunset. Suddenly, you're lowering your risk footprint effectively, right? Because especially if you have private or sensitive data contained in multiple places and more places, if you're not using them, if they're wasteful, if you can wind that down, your compliance posture improves. So I think there's all kinds of knock-on effects here. And as we touch on AI models, I'm getting the feeling that classic data quality management, first of all, it's slower, it's reactive. It doesn't give you as full a picture of data quality issues. Another thing that came to mind as you were speaking is, for example, one of the biggest data quality metrics that end users have to pay attention to is currency, right? When was this last updated? Am I sure that I'm using the right data in decision making? If the ability in data observability just to provide that one data point is something that we've classically had to measure reactively with latency and lag time, making it hard to have really a trustworthy snapshot there of when the data is from, kind of thing. And I'd imagine that when we're working with AI models and developing AI models, it's that much more important. So I get the feeling that data quality management might not be enough in the world of AI, AI model development. Does data observability match that world better?
100%. I think one of the biggest challenges that companies have today is really getting their data AI ready.
Right.
There is a lot of hype and a lot of chatter about AI, and everybody wants to leverage this amazing technology. But without clean and well-governed data, the AI results will fall flat.
And just to your point there, it's interesting. We talk a lot about AI governance these days, but at conferences out there, and the buzz in the governance world, though, is okay. I'm not even ready to tackle AI governance. We got to get our data in shape, right, to be able to even go down this path.
100%. So, and it's exciting because a lot of these AI-driven initiatives are now shedding a lot of light on data infrastructures and data foundations that are faulty and that need more attention before you can actually embark in a lot of complex AI use cases that will be very expensive to implement, and you may not reap all the benefits.
So
right?
You need to lay solid foundations in your data.
Absolutely. So invest in strong data foundations, lineage, metadata, scalable pipelines. It's really important. Not to mention that AI opens the door to a number of new sets of risks.
Right.
You're talking about, adverse impact on someone's life or health. You're talking about legal and regulatory exposure, reputational risk, poor customer experience if you don't have the right customer data or if you're not providing the proper experience to your customers, and ultimately financial consequences. There was, I think it was back in 2022 that a company called Unity Software fed some bad customer data
marketing
into their
software, I believe.
Fed some bad customer data into their ML models, and that resulted in 8% decline in revenue and 30% decline in market value. So So it's a big deal, right?
That's what we'd call a material impact there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just a shout out to baseball fans out there. Just thinking about our discussion, I think it was Yogi Berra. He was credited with this great joke that I like repeating, that, what's the difference between theory and practice? Well, in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is, which leads me to ask you about actual, in the trenches experience. You've done this before at scale for some pretty large organizations. So I think I'm hoping you're well placed to compare and contrast, different strategies and approaches to implementing it. So what have you taken away from your experience in actually doing this? Are there any huge do's and don'ts? What do you need to factor in or think about if you want to launch data observability? And I think we've talked about what it means for data stewards and data custodians and data engineers. But
right.
What are some of the implementation considerations that you've come across from your experience?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think it really depends on where the organization is in their data maturity curve. Right. So different organizations will take different paths depending on what their data DNA really is. At a large sports league, we actually, when you think about the build versus buy decision, we opted to buy a tool that worked really, really well for what we needed to do. We felt that was a way to get us up to speed a little bit faster. A lot of our use cases and the problems that we wanted to address in terms of observability were very plain vanilla use cases. There's nothing very specific. And the tech stack that we had as well was very conducive to the tools that are in the market today. And what I mean by that is there was very good interoperability across our data observability tool that we chose and the technology stack that we had supporting our data management strategy in general.
So that's a big factor to consider.
That's a huge factor, right? Because when you think about observability, you want to make sure that you cover the entire stack. If you're only observing a subset of your stack, then you're very limited. So if you have a tool that jives well with the technology decisions that we have already made, then you're in a really good position.
Less technical debt, less change management, etc.
Less, there isn't no need to customize it as much or build connectors, and so that is a huge weight off your shoulders. So to contrast that with, a big retailer in Canada, where we actually decided to build it in-house, and we built a homegrown product because our use case.
What drove that? Yeah.
Well, our use cases were more unique. Our platform was more unique, a lot more complex, with many different technologies that play, and having that coverage that I was just talking about was going to be finding a tool that would provide that coverage would be very, very hard. So we decided to build something in-house that was more customized to our need, and it was better strategic alignment with where we were from a data journey standpoint.
Understood.
Now, you asked about do's and don'ts. I think the one thing that I'll say is, like a lot of these large data initiatives, right? Start small. Think about what your crown jewels are in terms of what the data assets are. What are your mission critical data pipelines that you need to focus on first? And then once you start seeing value, and then you scale to additional pipelines. So that's one advice that I would have.
Crawl, walk, then run. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other one is, don't make it a set and forget type of initiative. Your data platform will evolve with ever-changing business needs, and so will your observability function, right? It's not a set and forget type of situation. You have to adapt as you go, and that evolves alongside with your data platform. And maybe the last one I'll say is, don't separate observability from governance, right? Don't create an observability as a technical solution only. It reinforces what data governance does, and there is a symbiotic relationship between the two, just as there is in data quality.
Interesting. So they'll be among the first users and consumers of outputs of data quality monitoring, data quality tools. I can imagine tools almost automatically creating and kicking out tickets going directly to data custodians, data engineers,
Right.
for immediate address. Elton, I think that our time is almost up, but you've certainly opened my eyes. And so I'd like to thank you very much for walking us through your learnings from the trenches. And I'd also like to thank our viewers and listeners for joining us at Adastra. We're always ready to discuss whatever data observability, data curation, cloud, and AI challenges. So, Elton, thank you again. And again, to our viewers, let us know what you think in the comments below and watch this space for more up-to-the-minute thought leadership from Adastra on making data analytics and AI your superpowers. Thanks again, Elton.
Thank you, Mark. This was a lot of fun.
For me too. So long for now.
All right.